Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to be painting with makeup. This is the palette that I bought for it. I think it cost me like $3 or something. We're going to be using only eyeshadow because I'm cheap and I don't feel like buying more than that for a video that's just for fun or may not even get finished, you know. I'm gonna try not to ruin the palette too much. Just because I don't want the makeup to end up going to waste after the fact. I don't know what I'm going to do with it, but I don't want to ruin it. So I'm going to use these Q-tips to like scrape up the pigment off of the palette and onto like a paint palette so that I can paint with it that way, you know? To actually mix, I'm going to use my Huion palette. I'm going to clean this off, don't worry. Before I worry too much about like how I'm going to paint with this, I'm going to sketch out something real quick. I decided to draw something pretty simple and straightforward just because I didn't want to be too emotionally invested in whatever I created in case it turned out to look like total garbage. Because obviously it would not be very fun to be like super proud of line art in a sketch and then to ruin it with cheap makeup. But anyways, I decided to draw a face, and of course I gave her cute little elf ears because I've just been drawing so many like fairies and magical creatures lately that I just had to. I added in lots of stars and stuff, and tried to keep it just super simple, something that could have like makeup as the real centerpiece, something that lots of soft pinks would really suit. All in all, I knew I was going to be challenging myself by using makeup instead of like actual paint, so I wanted to stay well within my comfort zone for pretty much every other part of the piece. So I got to add in lots of stars and fun stuff like that. I ended up going with like this cool brown for line art. I really wasn't sure what color to choose. But I tried to choose something relatively neutral, so that again the makeup would really be the centerpiece. And in the end, I think I chose correctly because the brown kind of harmonizes well with the pink, but it also isn't like distracting and loud, and it isn't like too boring like just black line art or anything like that. I can't really tell what it is, but something about this piece also kind of deviates from my art style. I don't know what it is. Okay, so this is what we have to work with. Obviously the face is a focus because we're working with makeup. Why not keep it on theme? And it's a very simple piece. That way if I mess it up, I'm not too emotionally invested because I can't imagine this is going to be super simple. Yeah, let's just get right into our palette. After extensively cleaning off my palette, I broke open the paints, so to speak, and I grabbed my Q-tips and scraped up that beautiful, perfectly even surface. I guess I kind of ruined the palettes, even if I didn't want to. Like, look at this. I'm just destroying it. I'm definitely not using this the way that it's meant to be used. I don't know. All y'all out there who are like makeup savvy, do palettes normally get like as messy as this did? Because I think the last time I had an eyeshadow set, I was like pretty tiny. Probably I was like 9 or 10 years old and I got a set for Christmas. I had a lot of fun with it, but I remember the kit getting really messy. So all you makeup savvy, talented makeup people, do palettes normally get this messy? Or is this just me because I know I'm using it incorrectly? Anyways, the quote-unquote paints were actually a lot more pigmented than I thought they'd be. Like scraping it onto the palette and then mixing it with a little bit of water actually resulted in this like chalky watercolor paint. Like I was able to use all the colors at some point, you know. I think the one that I actually found least useful was that light pink that's on the lower right side of the eyeshadow palette. And the colors that I found most helpful were of course that skin tone, the browns, the more reddish hue, and even like the sparkly glittery color. I really enjoyed using those to add a little bit of shimmer and kind of work with the texture as a feature instead of something that would like hold me back, because I was kind of worried about that. But in the end, it just kind of looks like when I used to paint with cheap watercolors or cheap gouache. And up until about a year ago, this kind of chalky texture was something that I was used to getting in my cheaper sets, you know, like my I had an old set that I got at like this multi-purpose shop. I keep referring to it as a drugstore, but it's not a drugstore. It's like an outdoorsy grocery, also kind of hobby store. I don't know what to call it. But I bought super cheap paints there, and yeah, that was my first experience with watercolor. And honestly, that's what painting with this $3 eyeshadow set reminds me of, because it still has that chalky look, you know? And then I went from that to an Artist Loft set of gouache, and that still had that like chalky effect on paper. So frankly, it didn't even like faze me for a moment that that was what the eyeshadow looked like. So this was actually like way easier than I thought. And mixing colors like was something that for some reason I had trouble with though. When I had the stuff out on the palette, of course, stuff kind of mixed naturally, like all the colors, but I had this idea in my head, I think because in the eyeshadow palette, it's all separated, that for some reason I wouldn't be mixing on the palette, but then I actually did end up mixing on the palette to create all the little shifts in skin tone and all that. And it was actually a really fun, like, creative experiment. I've seen people do paintings with makeup before, but it's usually like old lipsticks and old foundations, and they kind of use them like pastels or like in their original form. But this was actually really fun to kind of alter the form of the product entirely for this use. So honestly, I have to give the makeup company like props for creating something that honestly worked well for this, although I did have some problems with layering, and I'll kind of share that coming up. Here's the point where I kind of encountered some challenges, if you will. Building values is kind of difficult with the limitations of eyeshadow. Like at a certain point, it stopped looking intentionally chalky, and it started to look kind of like I was just pushing around the pigment when I was trying to add more. Like here you'll see our start shading with like a brown, and then I'll go in later with like a deep pink to kind of define the color of the hair. And that's because I really can't build color super easily with these. Like you'll see I'm shading here more because it's hard to keep that eyeshadow from fanning out a whole bunch when you're layering it again. So I added that kind of reddish pink tone that was on the palette to my brown, and I made it like super thick. Like I added very little water just so I could get some like shadows that stayed in place after the fact. So I had to kind of rearrange my workflow for this part and go back to do more layering just because things weren't staying in place. Like I mentioned, these areas looked a little bit more chalky, and it kind of pushed around the pigment a little bit, but honestly, other than that, it worked fine. Like I went back in and layered more to add more shadows to her hair, and I can't really complain. I mean, this is a $3 eyeshadow palette, and I'm absolutely not using it for what it's supposed to be used for. Another fun part of this process was having an already kind of curated color palette, and I had a couple different color selections to choose from when purchasing this, but of course I went with the pinks because who wouldn't? And even in a painting, these colors all like work really well together, like for layering and all that. But of course, you know, it's eyeshadow, not paint, so again, it looks pretty chalky. Here you can see I changed my technique for the final touches. I pulled out a Q-tip and I just dipped it directly in the eyeshadow to apply some like directly to the painting. I'm not sure if this worked super well. I think it did okay, but there was nothing really to make it like stick to the painting. So I don't know. I think it worked fine, I guess. Just I thought it would give it a more concentrated look, and it really didn't give it a super pigmented kind of effect like I hoped it would. And here came the final challenges in adding the last touches. I was actually kind of worried that the gel pen wouldn't work over the eyeshadow for some reason, but it actually did perfectly fine, and I colored in the stars that way, or I say color, but you know, removed color technically, with my white gel pens, just because obviously I had such limited colors for the eyeshadow, and I wasn't sure how well this was going to work, so I didn't want to waste time trying to fill space with that, or fill the stars with that. But anyway, I think the white stars look really, really cute against the nice soft pinks and browns. I feel like I've said this a million times throughout the video, but I really did not expect this to go as well as it did. I really love how this piece turned out. It looks super, super soft, and obviously I'm biased because I love pink. But yeah, this was a really fun challenge, and I totally recommend it for anyone who wants to give it a try. It's a lot of fun, and it's pretty cheap too. I mean, you don't have to go out and buy new makeup like I did. Real quick before I get going, I want to say thank you so much to my Ko-fi supporters, Ashley, Savvy, and Tiffany. Thank you guys. Your support means the world to me, and it gives me the ability to make stupid, impulsive purchases like that eyeshadow palette. So if anyone else wants to enable me, click the link in the description box for all these fun rewards. Thank you guys. I'll catch you guys next time. Bye.